On this episode of the Ready State Podcast, we are thrilled to bring you the one and only Rory Mckernan. Rory is the current Director of Business Development and Athlete Representation at Mayhem Nation, as in Rich Froning, that Mayhem. McKernan brings a wealth of industry knowledge to his athletes from his years working as the media director and on-camera personality for CrossFit, as well as being the host of the CrossFit Games from 2010 to 2017. McKernan is a father and husband and lives in Cookeville, Tennessee, which I'll say is home to one of the best ice cream shops on the planet. Rory and I are great friends, and we are thrilled to bring you this wonderful conversation. Enjoy.
Rory, welcome to the Ready State Podcast. It's so fun to see your face.
What a joy, my friends. One of my favorite, media, and two of my favorite people. So thanks for having me.
We just have to get the elephant out of the room first. Uh-oh. You're looking so clean-shaven. I know it's been a minute. And
wait, did he have a beard for a while?
Did he have a beard?
I mean,
he had a man's beard.
I actually forgot about that. I'm going to have to go back in the internet and look at it.
There's a scene from the early... There's a scene from the early Dune movie from 1985. And he's like, Ursel, we have worm sign, the likes of which even God has never seen. And that's what that beard represented for me. Worm sign, like the biggest, like it was a beard of all beards. How did you talk your family into that?
Yeah.
It was funny. It was one of those things. It was like a curiosity. And actually, we're coming up on a year. So it was at the CrossFit Games.
Yeah.
And for the first time in, I don't even know, over a decade, I found myself like my appearance did not matter. There was zero impact on my job, whereas I had to be like clean shaven in the past, right? And so I didn't shave all games week, and I'm like, oh, this is fantastic. But now I look like Rich Froning, and Rich is like the constant stubble, and there's like a Cookeville uniform, right? And part of it is like the stubble, and I was like, well, I got to set myself apart somehow. So like, let's just keep this baby rolling. And I passed that. It's like when you're growing your hair out, like. You got that point of no return. And I was like, I'm there. I might as well roll with this thing. And little by little, it just kind of got this life of its own. And we can go down this rabbit hole. We don't have to, but like just as with other things, there are beard people.
Oh my Lord. Yes, we know.
Man, once they get on your side, it's like, I almost felt like a traitor. Like once I shaved this thing, I was like, they're going to hate me. Everybody's going to hate me.
Oh, I mean, Kelly has had a beard a couple of different times, and then he ends up shaving it off mostly just because summer.
I don't want to look like I'm 60 years old.
Well, yeah, and his his beard is like half gray, but I mean the internet loves him with a beard. Like it is. So yeah, I mean, we actually have to have the conscious conversation. Like, okay, it's 100 degrees out. Kelly's like, I'm too hot with this beard on my face, but he's like, there's going to to blowback.
And I got some catfishing to do with my wife, so I want to look younger than I really am.
Amen.
Rory, where are you talking to us today?
So I wanted some authenticity in the mix. So I'm actually in the media office here at CrossFit Mayhem, where all the YouTube magic kind of comes together and happens.
That's amazing.
Wait, so we talked about this at the beginning, and it's really kind of a non sequitur, but I heard that you discovered you have a cave on your property in Cookeville, and
what's
the deal?
Into the cave?
I do. I mean, Kelly mentioned it, and then I was like, okay, we can talk about like athletics and business and CrossFit, but I want to talk about this cave.
There's a lot of Stranger Things in our world.
Yeah, this feels very Stranger Thingsy.
And just as an aside, they just discovered the Spanish galleon that was the route, legend route for the Goonies, which is very cave based.
Shut up. So they actually discovered it?
They discovered the timbers that was why the emeralds and the whole story of that sort of Oregon coast. So I'm very much alive with caves are rad. My friend owns a cave. Continue.
Okay. And I got a legend for you too, and it ties in. So the context you need to know is that when we moved to Cookeville, Tennessee, we were like, hey, the dream was always small farm land, whatever. So about 6 months ago, we moved on to 12 acres with a fixer-upper. We're in the middle of demolition, so you guys know, it kind of cuts your feet out from under you a little bit. So if I forget my children's names or whatever, later in this conversation, just know that I'm on my back foot right now. But in discovering the land and kind of chopping down trees and doing the bush hog and getting things uncovered, we found a bunch of little foxholes and dens for different animals. And I just happened to be kind of banging around one day on the dirt bike, and I was like, man, that's a big one. And I did a double take, and I was like, no, that's a hole. And then I went over and I looked down and I threw a rock down, and I was like, oh, we legit have a cave. And this area of Putnam County actually is known for it. So under Tennessee Tech, under downtown. There's very well-known cave systems that are like miles long. So it wasn't out of nowhere, but for me to be like, dude, they sold me the house. Like they didn't say anything about it. It's great. And so, yeah, since then there's been a couple of explorations when I went down there. So the important cave lore though, my friend, and I will bring you out here for this is,
I've seen Batman. I'm not afraid.
In the aftermath of the Civil War, apparently no one knows what happened to the Confederate Army's gold. And so there's a couple of different legends about, oh, some of it went here, some of it went there. There is a story that specifically ties back to the Cumberland region. And there was a bunch of Confederate soldiers. They got caught by the Union soldiers. And before asking them any questions, they just banged, like shot them all, which was short-sighted, obviously. And so no one knew where the gold went. Nobody knew anything about it. And now we know that it's on my property.
I can already see the movie called Rory's Gold.
Wait, so you did you go?
There'll be no movie. You will never see me again. You two will see me again, but I'll be off the face of the earth. We'll buy an island together.
Okay, so you went into said cave and just like set the stage for me. Is this something where you like roped up and like rappelled into your cave, or can you just walk into it? And did you go alone?
Yep.
Or
So
with others?
question.
I would be too scared to go by myself. So
the first time, I was like, well, I have to get down there before I call anybody about this so that I can get said gold and make sure that I hide it and secure it in a safe place. And I'm only half joking about this. Like the more you think about gold, you're like, I think it really is down there. but
Just
so the answer to your question is like, it is an actual down climb about 30 feet. You could rappel, but it's small enough in diameter that you can like push on both sides. You can down climb pretty easily. And when you get into it, you're in a probably 30 foot deep and at least 20 feet high room.
Wow.
And
Whoa.
oh yeah. And it chokes on either side down to another room of equal size. And so I went down there by myself. I've got a couple of janky flashlights and I start to kind of get that. I try to get myself brave enough to go down into the second room. Can't pull it off. Try again the next day. Won't do it, but I go further and further each time. And so as luck would have it, since we are in this cave rich region, there's a bunch of people around here who are way into spelunking and whatnot. And I called the guy that I know, a local guy named Jim Fox. And he was like, I would love to explore your cave. If it's, I think it was 80 feet. If it's 80 feet or deeper, like you get to name it. And anyways, Jim came over and the dude he's incredible. I'll tell you all about his story some other time. But he came over with a bum arm, like he had a staph infection, and so he really wasn't supposed to be doing this. He goes down into that second room like it's nothing. Like he took for granted that I had already been in there, and I was like, no, I hadn't been that far yet. Just waiting on you. Well, then he just like progresses through these little cracks and caverns, like he's sticking his head in places like you couldn't pay me $1 million to go.
Because there are no snakes in Tennessee.
Well, not in caves. It's nice and cold down there, Okay. So actually, I think you'd be guaranteed not to run into a snake down there. But anyways, long story short, he's like, hey, there's a third room. We can totally get into it. And this dude, he's upside down and like pulling rocks out and throwing them, like trying to dig his way into the third room. And I'm like, bro, what if this thing collapses on us? And anyways,
talk about Jim, unknown and unknowable fitness. I love it. You're like, cave, let's do this.
And he loves it. And I was like, so anyways, he's coming back. So I'll keep you guys updated like when we get into the third room. For now, 2 rooms, exciting to have on your property.
Can we see it on
the
the gram?
Will be on the gram.
Last question for you though is like you go down to one room and then you go down again? Or are you down in the one room and then you just kind of stay at that same depth and go to the other rooms?
Room 1 to room 2 is like down-ish. It's almost like it's effectively the same. Yeah, effectively once you get down there, you're on the same plane.
Do me a favor. There's a movie called The Rescue made by our friend Jim He.
Watched it.
Yeah, thank you. Just
Great
watch
movie.
that again before you go down there in the rains. Just do us a favor.
Maybe just tell your wife that you're going to be going down into the cave next time. Just tell someone.
For people that haven't seen that movie, it is fantastic.
Okay.
And probably one of the most stressful things I've ever been through. And I didn't go through it. I just watched it.
How you are not a native Tennessean. I don't know if you know this. For everyone else, how did you end up in Tennessee, specifically in Cookeville, Tennessee?
I am not a native Tennessean. I am a native Texan, and my wife is from Michigan. And that doesn't answer the question exactly, but we met, fell in love, made a family in California, spent a great couple decades out there, and kind of just saw that through to its natural conclusion. And we knew it actually, we made that decision like before I got let go by CrossFit, but in the midst of deciding we were going to move away from California, I get let go by CrossFit in the midst of all the craziness, and it sealed the deal. Just amongst other things, just for cost of living, speed of life, and a real need for change. But everything was on the list. I spent a lot of my youth in the mountains, so I'm like as much as a lot of people are ocean people, I'm a real mountain guy, and those are real high on my list. But we both had veto power, so Ange vetoed most of my mountain destinations because she grew up in Michigan and wasn't looking for the snow. Um, but how Cookeville was basically, Nashville was high on the list, and at the time that I mentioned when I got let go by CrossFit, I was actually in Cookeville not long afterwards for an event that Rich has done on a yearly basis called Mayhem for Mustard Seed. And so I was just out to MC the event, and like kind of like you, like I'd just been out here for seminars and weekend at a time, right? Like I'd never actually explored. And when I came back, it was really kind of just a flippant like, hey babe, like maybe Cookeville would be cool, And we literally laughed about it. We were like, haha, no way. But it sort of sank in. And over the next couple of days and weeks, we were like, man, this is like, it keeps on kind of resonating. And so we came back to visit as a couple. And by the time we left, we spent a week here, brought the kids back. And by the time that week with the kids was over, we were already looking at houses. So nice. We just sort of very like, it was a very honest, again, like almost started as a joke, but we were shopping for a place to live, and this just kind of jumped out and grabbed us at the right time.
So I have not had the good fortune to be out there in Cookeville yet, although one of these days I would like to go. But Kelly describes Mayhem and the community there as like, in fact, sometimes I think he can't come up with like the right words to describe it other than that it's a really special place. Yeah. But I don't know. I just love to hear you describe like, what is it about it? What's special sort of, and maybe even kind of paint the picture. Cause I know Mayhem's doing a lot of different things. And so even, like if someone were to show up there,
Mayhem?
Yeah. Like, what is it?
It started out as a gym. Yeah. And it's a little bit bigger than that.
But yeah. If you show up there, what is it? If you show up, what do you see? Who's there? Sure. What's the vision? Like just, definitely just fill us all in.
Yeah. I mean, I'll separate those into like gym life and outside the gym, because outside the gym was something that really, it was all icing on the cake, right? Like we knew we were going to move here and plug into a really large affiliate community. We didn't know exactly what it was going to be like. But the stuff outside the gym has been a real joy as well. And I know you guys are so outdoorsy that was the upsell for us when we got here. And I was like, wow, you can't throw a rock without hitting like a state or national park, So all sorts of waterfalls, all sorts of rivers. And then I guess I'm putting the cart in front of the horse here, but the culture who's like, there's not just pressure to get in the gym and be fit, but there's like, yo, we're going mountain biking. Hey, we're going out to the lake. There's just all sorts of activities that are kind of happening on a consistent basis. Whereas this isn't my previous job's fault, but when I was in NorCal, I just found that I was doing less things. It was like, I had to really plan like my special occasions. And here I feel like there's always something going on, so you're always kind of keeping up. But the inside the gym, the affiliate community is really cool. And I think what steals the attention and steals the show is like the fact that Rich and his team are training right now. There's 2 other teams that qualified for the games. They're all here. And in less than a week, 4th of July is coming up, right? There's going to be about 20 athletes who are going to the CrossFit Games who are going to stop in and make it their home. So like, what would you see if you stopped in at CrossFit Mayhem now, like between July and August? You'll see a large percentage of the CrossFit Games field, like in their training environment, throwing down head to head. But what I was really pleasantly surprised with, because we moved here outside of game season, and it was, a time when I was less involved anyways, but the affiliate community was super strong. Like I train at 5 a.m. now. There's a huge amount of people who are just there kind of throwing down, trying to get better, just like you would see in most affiliates around the world. I do think that there's a little bit of a higher drive here. Like when I first started training, I was just doing an 8:15 class. All these people were my peers and they had just dropped their kids off, but the workouts were hard and people were going ham, So
there's definitely like 5 a.m. just because you're like, okay, I can't keep it up.
At least the 5 a.m. crew, they'll be a little tired.
Where can I fit in? Yeah. but yeah, no, I've been really, really impressed by that. And then, again, I'm not here to say that it's been unique to my life. Like from the minute we touched down, there were people, and this wasn't just CrossFitters. This was like community wide, new neighbors and things like that. They just scoop you up. There's less of a barrier in the South. Like people are a lot less afraid to just throw out a hello, how you doing, and sit and wait for your answer and actually listen to what you have to say. And that was really important to us because our kids. Gus was about to go into the 5th grade, so he was about to be a middle schooler, and we were like, man, this succeeds or fails based on how well our kids adapt and how well they like it. And yeah, so we just got scooped up right away, and that was the selling point. It was like I could be in somewhere far less attractive, and if the people in the community are solid and they've got your back, at the end of the day, like raising kids, you guys know that's what's important. That's what's important for us.
You just pulled off a 24-hour mountain bike race. Is that an example of what you're talking about in terms of people are out there training, but also playing?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's more like Rich, the ringleader. Like when Rich wants to do something, he'll tow a crowd with him. And he's like, it's not even like, hey, do you guys want to do this? It's like, hey, we're doing this, And so we got a couple
this is what we're doing now.
This is what we're doing. And so the mountain bike thread, that was one that he just kind of dropped in there. But yes, that is what I'm talking about. It's like and it's not like you're going to get, kicked out if you don't stay fit, but there is more of there's more opportunities, I feel like, right?
No, I feel like I'm going to get kicked out of my family if I don't stay fit. I understand. It's very reasonable.
Okay, good. You know the deal. I didn't, I wanted to stay political about it.
One of us is a world champion. One of us is not.
But and you guys, just while we're on it, we're invited to the 24-hour mountain bike race, and I expect to see you there next year. Otherwise, we'll have issues.
Yeah.
In full disclosure, we already had a 24-hour mountain bike race on the books for 2 weekends from now, or next weekend.
Like 2 weekends from now.
But things got too hairy.
Our team has imploded.
Oh, no.
I mean, not just us, but on a broader scale. So yeah, I think we may abandon planning our own and just join yours.
Nice.
Okay, so here you are, sort of media director at CrossFit, really the face of, this big, gigantic international competition. In fact, the largest sporting event in the world with the most number of participants. That's what the CrossFit Open is, and you really are the face of that. That pivots or changes for you with all we'll just call it the troubles.
Yeah.
like
Ireland,
we'll call them the troubles. You end up taking this role at Mayhem, and what is your role there? Because I feel like that was a big inflection point for them, and potentially a real second act for you, or a third act rather.
Yeah, that's well put. And so, are these text messages coming through and bothering you guys?
Nope.
Okay, great. So I don't know. The answer is the first thing that Richard. Well, that's not true. So when I left CrossFit, the real long story short is I kind of delved in and dipped a toe in doing the YouTube stuff and the freelance media, and it was rewarding in some senses, but it was also, if I'm being honest, it was really lonely. I'm somebody who really likes a team, and so while it was cool to feel the confidence that comes with shooting out on your own, doing your own thing. At the end of the day, I would go on these trips, and I went to China and around to Iceland and back home with multiple events in between, and it was high touch, and I was seeing a lot of people. Wasn't really anybody to give a high five to, and just kind of, didn't feel like I was able to make the same impact. I had a short little sojourn there with Noble, where I was working on their media and their projects. But ultimately, I got the opportunity to work with Rich on the Mayhem Classic, and it was pretty much like a glorified volunteer position. But based on all my prior experience, I got to be like, hey, look, you guys are really kind of undershooting your landing. There's a lot more potential here. Hey, why don't we do a broadcast? Have you ever thought of doing things this way? And it was just a really, really solid working relationship with no pressure, right? I wasn't looking for a job. He wasn't looking to hire me. But when it was all said and done, and I guess this ends up being right before the pandemic, I parted ways with Noble and was kind of going back into the freelance media stuff. And the first thing that Rich ever asked me was, he said, "Hey, would you be my agent?" And I was like, the first thing that shocks me is that you don't have an agent. You never have. Uh, and the second thing that's really important for me to tell you is that I've never been an agent. And while I do have fantastic relationships in the community and I know how to leverage brands well against media, like I don't know that it does or doesn't play to my strengths, but having had enough time to see what you guys are all about and get a deeper dive into Rich as a person, because you guys know, like you meet a lot of people of celebrity status, and for me, I'm always kind of trying to poke holes, like not in a negative way, but like I always want to test that authenticity, and Rich has always like passed the test for me with flying colors and then some. So I knew it was something I wanted to be a part of, and it's a really long way to get around and answer the question, but what my official working title now is Director of Business Development, because being Rich Froning's agent also means that you're dealing with at least 5 different business verticals, because he owns an apparel company and he owns the gym, which has massive events on a consistent basis. There's an online training division. Now there's coffee, and we have sister companies like Froning Farms. And so it's a complicated web, right? It's not just like, sure, company X, I'll do, set endorsement deal with you, and it's simple, and we move forward. There's a lot going on here.
So, how was I mean, did you feel like even though you had never been an agent, you were just able to sort of like hit the ground running and, leverage all of your prior experience in media and working with CrossFit and working with athletes for so long? I mean, to me, it seems like a perfect fit knowing you, but, were there bumps along the road, or were you just sort of like, okay, yeah, this totally fits within my strengths?
Yeah. I mean, yes to both. There was, I had negotiated on my own behalf for what, when I delved, even though it was just 1 year, but when I went into the freelance space. And so that, and the experience of having, especially with broadcast media and Instagram and stuff, like I felt like I had great chops there. And the power of Rich is just, you guys know the power of Rich, right? He does great things. And I think I haven't met a brand yet who's had a bad experience with him. So, yeah, it was more than anything. It was just like I felt the pressure of wanting to do a fantastic job. I'm a real task oriented guy, and I didn't want to blow it. So there was luckily for me, the first 6 months to a year there was a lot of untangling. There was a lot of basic organization and some structure. And this is a time when Mayhem was also making a shift into doing that a lot more intentionally. We've kind of joked about this, but the distance that Mayhem came in absence of, I don't say in absence of structured planning, but really a lot of it was just like, hey, what's the next right thing? Cool, let's do it. And Rich has been training his face off to go win the CrossFit Games every year, right? So the success has come really very, very naturally. But yeah, I think in some ways it was a perfectly natural fit. In other ways, it was uncomfortable. But I don't know. As a human, it's super cheesy. But a lot of people will tell you, like, these worst things that happen to you end up kind of shifting and being the best thing that happened to you. I probably would have stayed at CrossFit for the rest of my life and withered away and died as a company man. And the opportunity to shift and flex a bunch of new muscles, try out a bunch of new things, be part of an organization where like you can thump your chest every day and be really proud of it. Like all those things were a huge blessing in disguise.
So I'd like to talk a little bit more about the CrossFit Games, just because it's coming up here in really just a number of weeks. But I know Mayhem's going to be fielding multiple teams, as they always do. But maybe you could tell us specifically a little bit more about that and what you're looking forward to.
And how many individual athletes you have.
Yeah, and how many individual athletes.
It's impressive.
And then also maybe tell us a little bit more about why do all these athletes drop in that coming month? Like, are they international athletes who just need a place to land and get ready? I'd love to just sort of hear about what the vision is, since we're definitely into CrossFit Games season right now, and Mayhem is always one to watch.
No doubt. And so 3 teams that we know of. And if I had the spreadsheet here with me, I could tell you there's a bunch of other teams probably who associate themselves as well. 3 teams we know of, 14 individual athletes, which is far and away the highest that I know of out of any training camp. And then if you put everybody together, so if we're going to do masters, teenagers, etc., we've got over 80 athletes who will be represented at the games. which is really just, face melting. And if you really kind of step back and think about it, I wish I knew the answer to your question, J Star, which is what's the attraction? I think part of it is the vibe around here and the way that people go about things. Look, some people need like very strict hands-on coaching. I think that what happens here is there's a great framework provided and people know what they can expect. And from there, it's jump in and throw down and kind of learn by doing. And on top of that, obviously, you've seen I know you haven't been here yet, but you've seen the facility, and it continues to grow and morph. And so, I think it's probably one of the only places where, for example, like you could have 4 teams practicing at a time, and they're all using a worm, plus any other kind of crazy specialty equipment that you could want as well. And there's the space to facilitate it. Where Kelly, since you've been out here, I know that I told you about it, but I'm not sure if you've seen any of it. But the outdoor pad that used to be, once upon a time, it was just a concrete pad. Then it was a covered pad. Well, now it's a closed in pad, which is going to be reserved for the Mayhem athlete training crew. And, it's athletes of a certain caliber who will be able to come here. And I think partially there was too many cars on the driveway at Rich's house, and the barn was running out of equipment, but we've gotten to a place where we've expanded beyond the barn.
Let me ask you, I think I have so many questions. Mayhem is a gigantic and really integrated programming approach. So you as anyone on the planet can drop in and have their needs met across a whole bunch of hosts, whether I want to get stronger or work on my Olympic lifting, I want to go to the CrossFit Games. And you have literally some of the world's best athletes using the programming from afar. Just that's it. They know how to coach and program. And yet simultaneously, I think one of the reasons that Mayhem is so cool is that it's actually a place where real people come and work out there. Is there ever any tension between the people who work out there and this machine that makes the place dope, and simultaneously as a distraction because you're filming things and, there are automatons, mutants walking around, how do you guys think about that consciously? And do you think about it consciously?
We absolutely do. And, but I would say like my answer to the question, and maybe you should do you should take me out of it and ask some of the members individually. Josh Malone, our gym manager, would certainly have an answer as well, but he is hypersensitive to it. And so Josh is very tuned into member concerns, and that's not just like the day-to-day, but you think about it, we have seminars on a consistent basis. And when I say consistent, I mean like almost every single weekend we run competitions. In December, we've got the Legends Masters competition coming up. Gym's going to be shut down Wednesday through Sunday. If you're an everyday CrossFitter and you're paying a membership, like that stings a little bit if you're not getting it paid back to you or made right in some other way, shape, or form. So the most important thing to say is that yes, we're hypersensitive to it. And I don't see those tensions. I think that actually people are pretty proud of where they come from. When, I've even got my dad's crew at 5 a.m. They'll go do drop-ins. Like some of them are going down to Florida for the weekend, and they're like, yeah, dude, wore my Mayhem shirt. Like people had all sorts of questions, and it's a little bit of a badge of honor or a point of pride. But for the obvious reasons also that I just mentioned, I mean, sure, they sometimes have to share their house with a lot of people. When it comes to the elite athletes, though, I think for the most part, until now, that is integrated like seamlessly. And that's the reason for building the outside facility, is so that the regular classes can run on their own schedule, open gym can run on its own schedule, and the CrossFit Games athletes can come in and do all their beast mode stuff. And neither group feels like the other one is kind of like impeding their training opportunities.
Well, and not to get too deep on silly logistics, but space.
Oh.
Well, I was just going to say space solves a lot of problems. And when you're in a place like Cookeville, where the real estate isn't $1 billion and you can expand and sort of meet some of those needs, because I can say, being a former gym owner, the space was always the challenge for us in terms of, trying to solve those tensions.
Because we weren't on Starrett Way. They're basically the gym's on Froning Way.
Yeah, that's on Froning Way. So anyway.
But I thought you guys had a creative solution, just taking the walls away. And then there's
initially I was like,
no constraints.
It's the infinite gym. It's totally great.
Yeah, just no walls, and that made it easier.
And especially since it's never rains here anymore.
Just back to also the elite athletes and sort of your, this discussion about like what attracts people to Mayhem. I mean, the unsaid thing must be that these athletes do well and see gains in performance.
Yeah.
Both being at Mayhem and following Mayhem program. And so that has to be a big part of what, brings people there and keeps them there, I have to think.
I would agree with you. And yeah, I mean, listen, 14 individual athletes, 80 total athletes that are going to the CrossFit Games. Like, if we still consider it to be like the ultimate proving ground, like these people are having massive success. Yeah. So I think that's a fantastic point. It's like, at the end of the day, if you're not seeing the results, then you're not going to stick with the program. And then, one more thing that I think is fairly obvious too, is Rich himself, and by extension, his entities, has a real well-defined sense of self. It's like, hey, here's what we're all about. Right. It doesn't mean that no one can come here that's not like a Christian, or who's serving on a 501c3, but he's like, hey, here's who we are and here's what we're all about, and he puts it out on a consistent basis on YouTube, social media, etc. And I think that a lot of people are gravitated towards that, either because they have the exact same values or they're curious about them. But there's a lot of like, hey, what you see is what you get, and by the way, our training works.
So, serious question now, dovetails into
please.
that. How important has Buffalo Brew, actually having a legit coffee company at the shop, changed your culture? Has it changed your culture? Because I came to think very differently. I'm in Cookeville like 100 years ago, and I'm like, oh, I'm drinking Folgers. And then I show up at Cookeville, and I'm like, oh, this is one of the best cappuccinos I've ever had. Like, what happened? And I can just like deadlift, get a cappuccino and a Topo Chico, deadlift.
Forget about that. You didn't come back talking about the coffee. You came back talking about the cereal bar. Like, he didn't come home and he was like, I got a great cup of coffee. He came home and he's like, oh my God, they had a cereal bar at Train with Rich.
Of course. I actually knew about that. That's the reason I went out in the first place. Answer my question.
Well, I'd tell you this. It's let me speak to it personally first. It's bad in terms of like, it'd be the same as just like putting a bar in the foyer of an alcoholic's office. I'm like, coffee for days, all day, every day. But no, it is a game changer. And it's funny. Did you come out for the Mayhem Classic, Kelly?
No, I haven't been out yet.
Okay. So even as recent as that space was completely unutilized. It had tried to be a couple things in the past, including treatment rooms and then eventually just storage.
I remember that.
And so as a benefit add to the fitness center, it's like, it's next level. And that's all the way from like my crew finishing up at 6 a.m. and going, and we probably stick around for another hour and a half. And to people who are passing through on a consistent basis and like, oh wow, hey, the gym's not actually open, but I can come and buy a t-shirt, hang out in the coffee shop, maybe meet some of the folks who are around, and then I think for members who can just kind of mill around, it's funny. When we started, I actually reached out to Annie Thorstadter, because when I went to Reykjavik, one of my favorite things was to be able to order a smoothie before you went and did your workout.
And then it'd just be waiting for you.
Scooped it off the counter and went and sat in the hot tub, But yeah, it has been a game changer, and
shout out to those amazing folks there, and the great breakfast burrito that is also available. Because as a food log breakfast burrito connoisseur, it's next level. Well,
and it doesn't seem like Mayhem is shy on creating culture and community. But interestingly, we just got back from Europe, where we're always reminded that a cafe is like an essential part of a gym in Europe. In fact, we have a friend who owns a CrossFit gym, and he's like, oh, no, you cannot own a gym. No one will be a member of your gym in Europe unless it has a cafe, because the whole culture there is about you work out. And at least in Germany, it's often you finish your workout and have a beer. But separate and apart from that, it's like, it does create this thing where you have this workout where there is a community vibe or whatever, but then people actually hang out afterwards and enjoy a beverage together, whether that's a coffee or a beer or whatever it is. And then that's like yet another way to create connection and community. So I think it's awesome.
Yeah. Yes. So much. Yes. And, it's funny, just kind of including that into the conversation about space, like I said, I'm a morning person, but once I get done with work and I pop back into the gym, it's mind blowing to see that coffee shop cranking, just like you're talking about, like people just socializing, having fun. Some of them who are just curious about the gym, and some of them who are just in it. But then you walk into the gym, you've got a kids class going at the same time as an endurance class, a regular CrossFit class, and some competitors shifting around. You're like, it's a crazy hive of energy.
It is a crazy high of energy. I'm not
Yeah.
going to lie. I love going there. I always feel inspired. Something that I don't think you and I we catch up every couple weeks or so. Just we drop into each other's lives. And something that happened recently that you said had really worked for you was something about habits. Like you had just committed to
Yeah.
making some habits. And I feel like there's a lot of executive people who are listening who would benefit from this. And I want to tell you that one of the things that I took away from that was like, okay, I'm going to steal one idea here and I'm going to try to hit my protein macros every single day. And like of all the things that I've really been trying to do, that was one thing I took away. I was like, oh, I'm going to just develop this as a habit. Can you talk about this habit and how it helped you as a father, dad, crazy, entrepreneur in this really wild space right now, how that kind of affected you?
Yeah, certainly. And man, I've tried so many different habit formation tools.
You don't know. Can I explain the zone to you?
Yeah, please.
Is that what you need?
I've had success there too. But this one in particular was Andy Frisella's 75 hard program. And it's funny, like I didn't bring it to the table. Ange did. She was like, hey, the 75 hard, it sounds crazy, sounds fun. Let's give it a shot. And it's what it is a set of 5 rules that you follow on a daily basis for 75 days. Just like, and there's, you make no deals with yourself. There's no gimmies. There's no cheat days. There's no nothing. And it was it was a huge slog, but it was incredibly beneficial for me. Less so about the actual habits themselves, but the act rather of being like, I'm going to commit to these for a severe amount of time. Like, and because for me, I used to be like, well, I'm going to try this for 30 days at a time. And I've done that with multiple things, like everything from surfing to writing. But 75 days was this crazy magical number where, they pin it as a mental challenge more so than an actual physical challenge. Because some of the stuff wasn't as difficult for people who live in our kind of stratosphere, like working out twice a day for 45 minutes. It was doable because there's a gym through that wall behind me, right? But some of the other stuff, like as simple as reading 10 pages a day, drinking a gallon of water, where it became a daily discipline that you weren't willing to cave on. And I came out of it on the other side, like just absolutely on fire. So to answer your question, like the physical results were astonishing because and not just like appearance and not just performance, but even the stuff under the hood. Like I prefer the Whoop in terms of just showing me basically showing me metrics over time and where they're trending. And I've never been able to affect my HRV with anything else. And I can't tell you which portion of 75 hard it was, but it was the first time ever in, wearing a Whoop at least, that I've been able to affect my HRV in a substantial way.
And by that you mean in a positive way, because I know you've been able to affect your variability
could I just
negatively.
I don't want to mess up your train of thought, but does everybody in this program choose 5 habits, and is it like you choose them yourself, or are they suggested? Tell me a little bit about like how you choose or how the habits come to you.
The only thing you get to choose is the diet. And so the rules are follow a diet, so any diet. And so, okay, sorry, to your point, Ange's only goal was to maintain her calories. So she wanted to stay under the caloric limit that she had set for herself. So she wasn't even really doing macros, and that was her diet. Paula and Jordan, my in-laws, they actually did a keto version of a diet. You drink a gallon of water. You take a progress photo every day. You read 10 pages of a self-help book. And then you work out twice a day, one of which has to be outdoors. So it's a 45-minute period of time that you've allocated as exercise. And that could literally be walking. And it often was for us, especially towards the end of it. So no, the answer to your question is that it was decided for you. And the reason that I'm so like, I don't mind promoting the heck out of it is because like, I don't know if you've ever listened to any of Andy's stuff or who he is, but he doesn't charge a dime for it. So it's non-monetized, which I like even more.
Yeah, that's really cool and so unusual.
It's so unusual. And,
and when one of my friends is like, dude, I just discovered this thing.
Yeah.
and you've got to try this. Like, I pay attention to when my friends say things like that, especially once again, you're like, and you'll have 5 friends who will help you. It's not like,
Yeah,
it wasn't that at all.
exactly.
You're like, dude, I just started drinking some water, moving
Yeah.
around outside a little bit more. And I didn't stop for 75 days. And I was like, wow,
Yeah.
I often am like, I'm going to get my protein macros. And I'm like, wah, wah, I didn't do
Yeah.
it.
Well, and we can all do it. And like, to your point about like, how did it help you as a human being? It's like, it's easier for me to say that I even noticed after I came off of it, and I was like, oh, I'm just going to like let it off the rails for a couple of days. And that turns into, I mean, for me, I'm pretty extreme one way or the other, so like I need discipline in my life. And this was an easy set
Do
of
you
rules
feel,
for
let
me.
me push back there. Do you feel like other people don't need discipline in their lives? I mean, and I don't even think it's
I desire it
discipline,
in my life.
like,
Yeah.
or structure. I think people need
Yeah.
routine and structure. Like
But I
we're,
think people are a little different. Like they're those people who have like their Saturday cheat day. Like that's not for me. Like if I follow a diet, I just need to do it 7 days a week. Like for me, a cheat day just bleeds in. Like I'm not a cheat day kind of person. Like that
That's right.
ends up bleeding for me into being like, well, all right, well, so Saturday was a
I don't know
cheat
if, I
day.
don't know
Now
if that's,
Sunday.
I don't know if that's discipline though. I guess
Yeah, I
what
don't
I'm
know.
saying is you've never struck me as a person who doesn't have drive, but having some constraints, some structure,
Yeah.
Anyway, that resonated with me, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And it worked for me. And actually, Jay, started your point. The only thing that I really disliked about it was like Gus's birthday came up. I don't want to be. I might not be an every Saturday cheat guy, but I want to be able to say in my life, not feel bad when I'm like, it's a kid's birthday. I'm just not going to be a psycho today, or it's a special occasion that Ange wants to go have a good time. We want to have a nice dinner. Like I want to be able to enjoy that kind of stuff. But yeah, it was a phenomenal experience for me, especially. It's been, well, I mean, probably since I was very early in my CrossFit career and just, super passionate about getting fit and whatnot, that I was dieting hard and working out hard. And it was a game changer to be like, oh man, still got it, baby.
Well, and
it's almost like it works.
what was interesting is, we're always trying to be sensitive to the fact that people are really busy and don't have time. And I think it might have been E.C. Sinkowski recently posted some study or data point that like the average American actually has 5 hours of free time a day. But most of us are spending that watching TV or being on our phones. So, it's interesting because it's like the first thing I heard when you said 2 45-minute workouts, my brain went immediately to like, well, people don't really have time for that or access to that. But then in the end, they probably actually do. I mean, you seem to be doing your workout at 5 a.m., which most people aren't working at that time.
But even the second one of going walking.
Yeah, and even the second one, if you're
walking
just like,
twice.
yeah, you just say, okay, after dinner, we're going to go for a 45-minute walk. In fact, most people probably do have time to do that. It's just sometimes feels so good to lay on the couch and like watch Stranger Things or whatever.
Well, and some of those times it was literally snowing out, and you had to do your outside workout, and so it was extreme in that sense too, where it was like,
I really like the outside part.
like you'd be planning ahead. You'd be like, oh, it's gonna rain this afternoon. I guess I'll do my outside workout first, or drag the rower out into the parking lot if you're at the gym already. So yeah, the extremity of it, I think some people would probably have an issue, like they would bounce back too far. But for me, it was a great kick in the ass and a reminder of just like, you can do these things. And to your point, like you recognize how much time you actually have in a day. And you can, instead of waiting till the iron's hot, like you can strike and make it hot, was one of the takeaways was like, you can't just wait for inspiration, man. I'm guilty of that over the years of just being like, it'll come. Just give it time.
No. Well, before we leave the subject, can I just ask one more question?
Please.
What, if anything, are you still doing it? Are you doing like a version of it that you think is sustainable for your life? Like, what are you doing? What are you still doing?
So he's actually takes it up a notch a couple more times. So
does a gallon of coffee give you diarrhea? That's what I want to
know. I can verify that it depends on your stomach. So I'm doing. Next, what I'm doing is what they call phase 1. So it's the same 5 rules plus 2 more, which is cold showers, and which I do the cold plunge already. So it's not even add-on for me. So cold exposure, and you make like a power list and you try and get through some stuff in a day. So I got 4 days into that and failed because I got strep throat, and I was like, I'm out. So last week was a sick week for me, and so I'll jump back onto that.
The two of you are interesting in that, I'll bring this up, and is that you're both like, I have friends who, I mean, we're at this age, but both of you are cancer survivors. Mm-hmm. And I just hear you both sort of resonating with, we do not mess around. We are, we need to be fit. We need to eat. We need to get outside. Like, you've sort of had a glimpse of the possibilities of not having those choices. And it is interesting that both of you are highly motivated about those things in a way that those of us who have not had cancer sometimes aren't. Will you get to talk
well, and
about
also
that?
just, maybe you feel like it's no longer like a choice, right? You're like, well, lost my choice here.
Yeah, no, you're totally
Yeah.
true. And I think for me, Juliet, I don't know how you guys dealt with this, but like I also, I'm 40 this year. So like I just got hit with midlife, and there was a big like a lot of it for me was
Oh,
like,
that's
hey
so
man.
cute. You're 40. That's so cute.
But you're like, I'm not like staring down the barrel or anything, but I'm like, hey, if years are definitely numbered and cancer wakes you up to that fact, it's like, how am I gonna do all these things? So sorry, another rule that I mentioned on that 75 hard is that you don't drink. Well, I quit drinking in 2020. And partially based on all these, everything that we're talking about right now is like, it just ceased to bring benefit to my life. And I do want to maximize these times, right? Like and for as long as I can, hopefully I'm doing it with my kids when they get old enough. But these 24-hour mountain bike races, the century rides, things like that, where it's like you don't get that stuff forever. And I like the way that you put it, but yeah, cancer is it's been a minute for me. So I feel like sometimes I lose that perspective, but it is a good reframing where it's like, yo, this could be like tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, can you just give us a quick backstory of what happened to you?
Yeah. I was healthy as a horse. I don't even think I had health insurance like the year before, but I was young in my CrossFit career. It was the first year we are going to be on ESPN. I was still bulletproof and just got one time, like literally, I remember the day where I was like, man, that's not supposed to be there, and I felt something on my nut. Sorry, that's a scientific term,
It's
and
fine.
I didn't. I remember like these are all kind of extraneous details, but I didn't have a doctor at the time, so I went to a physician. Everybody can kind of sympathize with this. I was like, I took the guy who was just taking patients. I went to him. I told him what was going on, and he literally, the guy gloved up and felt me up and told me I was good to go. And I was like,
Oh.
back of my mind, I was like, that ain't right, and I know it's not right, but it's exactly what I want to hear. And so, off I went, and within a week, I was on Christmas holidays, and it felt like I got kicked in the nuts. So like I knew exactly what was going on. Uh, didn't want to believe it, but then I came back to Santa Cruz, and Mark Rosen. Do you guys know Mark Rosen? Remember him?
Yeah.
Yep.
So Mark Rosen was a urologist who was at Greg Glassman's like original gym back in the day. He became a great friend, and anyways, I went to him. He knew that I had cancer before we even did anything. So he sent me immediately to the hospital, and that was a Friday. I had a surgery on a Monday. They pulled it all out, and frankly, there's a lot more details, but that was really the end of it. We had 6 more years of surveillance and decided not to do chemotherapy because Angie was sick, or was pregnant rather. But yeah, it was in the grand scope of cancer. It was an amazingly fast and curable ordeal. But anybody who's been through that knows that the terror and the uncertainty and all the kind of like decision making processes you go through are indescribably stressful, right? Like I would not doubt that that's where all my gray hair came from.
Gray beard. Back to the beard thing. Yeah, what's interesting that made me think of that is like one of the things that bugs me is when people say like, well, when you were sick. And I was like, well, was I sick?
Right.
Because I was like in great shape and like, right, like this thing happened to you, but like right, other than like having this tumor situation in your body, you're like, but I wasn't really sick. I was like jacked and fit. And I don't know. So I thought of that as you were saying that, because like people would say, well, back when you were sick. And I was like, but were you sick? I guess
Right.
like technically, medically you were sick, but like you weren't really sick.
Yeah, and it's all relative, right? So we had chosen a lifestyle prior to that was of fitness and expressing yourself with movement and all these things. And so I think that it's just a bump in your road, but I get a lot of perspective when I talk to people who didn't choose that lifestyle and they go through the exact same thing, and it is this monumental hurdle that they've got to overcome. And one other small detail is like in the post cancer scans for me, Kelly knows this obviously, but they said, hey, good news, bad news. The good news is the cancer's gone. The bad news is you got this weird thing in your lung that we got to get sorted out. And it ended up being like a non-functioning lung tissue growth that had been in my the bottom lobe of my right lung since birth. And it had this crazy blood flow coming to it. So the long story short there is that I had to have the cancer for this lung tumor was far more invasive than anything that happened with cancer. And so even still, I got back to like within, I don't remember, maybe it was 6 months or at least a year, and I was overhead squatting 300 pounds. And so, the point of that story being, I've met people who had very similar things, and they're like, oh my gosh, you run, you do sports. And I'm like, yeah, dude, like I'm in fact, like I'm probably back to better than I ever was pre-cancer and lung stuff.
You may even be a little bit lighter.
True. all that pesky lung
Swing
tissue.
to weight ratio. I'm just saying. I remember Juliet complaining that her snatch had gone down and that she dropped on her pull-ups a little bit. That was some of her complaints. And I was like, that's reasonable.
It's annoying.
You pull up whores.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I think the other thing I'd say is everyone's like, well, I mean, I'm not like you. Like, I don't heal very quickly, and and wow, you heal so quickly, and well, yeah. I mean, I have this problem now, but I'm not like you. And I'm like, but you are like me. Like, I'm just a normal human with like regular, well, obviously crappy genetics, but normal human. But I've just sort of created an environment.
Have you seen your daughters? I'm going with good genetics.
But just created an environment for myself where.
Yeah.
I have some tools available to me and some sort of training history.
And non-negotiables. And interesting that both of you also stopped drinking. You guys don't drink.
Yeah, boring.
I know.
So boring.
So
party poopers.
Let me ask you this. I want to pivot back just for a second. We are in what I think is, I used to think we were at peak games, but we're not. The CrossFit Games have become so sophisticated. The organization aside, the actual putting on the games aside, the people who are participating in the games are legit, and they're legit younger, and they're stronger and fitter. Recently, there was a really well-known super coach in the world who was still making fun of CrossFit. And some of my friends were texting, were like, wow, is it just like, you don't know what to say? So you laugh at CrossFit, and I was like, because I just saw a guy snatch over 300 pounds and then run like a 5-minute mile. And I was just like, I don't understand. Like, give me your shot on this, where this isn't working, where I have the freakiest athletes in the world becoming even freakier, where I still am more and more blown away by this next generation. You have been there from the start. You've seen this trajectory, and now you're in the heart of it. Where do you think the CrossFit Games is going in a positive way, and what do we need to watch out for as athletes?
Oh, great question. I mean, where do I think that it's going? I think that you made a great point about how young the athletes are getting. And I think that trend is going to continue as people are kind of finding this earlier. They're getting access and hands-on to fantastic coaching. I think that the international element continues to kind of astound me. I remember, well, I'm sure you guys do too, but for some people who are listening, there was a point in time where we would offer a couple of spots to the Latin Americans, a couple to the people who lived in Africa, and a couple to the people in Europe. And it was almost as if it was like, we want to do this just to kind of like engender some international growth. Well, now that some of the most legitimate athletes in the space are coming from all three of those places, namely South America and Europe. So I think international growth continuing is going to take it, is going to be one of the kind of biggest growth motivators. And I think, I don't know this, but I would hope that in the future we might see the CrossFit Games actually kind of move to those places, or some of these training camps that are in other places will kind of start to lead the way. And you know how that goes. The same thing as like men's soccer in the United States hasn't really taken off. They haven't continued to dominate, but if you can kind of get a little bit of inspiration, you get a little bit of some of the top athletes in the sport performing well, it can help out. So I hope that trend continues, and I hope that we see more of an international flair.
I feel like we're also starting to see athletes be able to make a living. Not necessarily like there are some CrossFit athletes who've had stratospheric success, and as in all top sports. But I'm also starting to see that like there are working athletes who are making a career or a living, the same living maybe if you played professional women's soccer. I mean, I were like on that level, and like you may not even be a podium athlete on the CrossFit Games, but you're making a living as a CrossFit athlete, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, and I think, and I think that there's still like a massive delta between top of the game and middle of the pack. But yeah, I think you're right, and I think that I don't think it's been nailed yet, but I do think that some of these athlete organizations that are springing up and trying to work in collaboration with CrossFit Games, etc., like that's a step in the right direction, because they're you're never going to have parity across all athletes. Like we don't see that in any sport, but I do think that you could, it could be more equitable in the sense that you're saying, where I can up the game for everyone by providing opportunities where people can make a living and actually train full time. You asked what people should look out for, and it's funny. I don't know that I had an answer to begin with, but I think what's really important is that it's easy, especially when people have they have a flash of success, to lose sight and perspective on how intertwined and I don't want to say the shaky ground that we're on, but like you're right. The growth is massive. There are athletes who are making a lot of money, but at the same rate, like I saw some true colors in the past few years, especially when COVID came out, when things got upside down, where people kind of stopped remembering that there's a large community element to this, and that it's built on a foundation that really incorporates CrossFit affiliates and gyms. And it's important to have the fan base, and it's important to serve the volunteers and judges who are making these events happen. And so I think that's, if I was going to say like, what is there to look out for? I think that it's putting your cart in front of the horse and lacking the perspective on like what really drives this and makes this thing tick. Because again, like if everyone's just pulling for themselves, I think there's the danger of us shooting ourselves in the foot. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I am not one to make critiques, but I think one of the biggest losses in that department was the loss of the in-person regionals. And I get it. I run a business and I know how much it costs to put on events, how expensive that is and time consuming, and, put events all over the country and around the world. But I know at least when we owned an affiliate, once the regionals ended, that really disconnected our affiliate community from the games. It became, because but up to that point, it's like we would have a San Francisco CrossFit 10 at the NorCal regionals, and all our members would come and cheer on teams, and they really were connected to it.
And connected to the regional athletes.
Yeah, and connected to the regional athletes. And even if they weren't from our gym, they knew that like, Jenny Labaugh was a NorCal athlete or whoever, and there was a real connection between just our normal paying gym members and the games. And for me, that's when I noticed there was more of a disconnect between, the games is this like unique thing over here, and the affiliates are this unique thing over here. And again, I get it from a business standpoint. I can never see how bringing those back would make sense.
Yeah.
But it's a loss anyway.
Yeah. And none of this happened in a vacuum, right? Like, no. I would say this entire community, sports fans and just gym goers and affiliate owners alike, like we've been through a lot of shit in the last couple of years. And honestly,
say it again for the people in the back.
We have been through a lot of shit. And so the goodwill's been like, sucked out little by little by little. So I get it. It's hard to show up and cheer for the regional athletes when there's larger issues afoot that are affecting the way that you make income, or when you don't know if CrossFit's going to be around in another month or two. I do feel like the ship has started, like the rocking is diminishing, and it's starting to get back on the right track. And I think largely that's because you can't kill us, like I think that any other grouping of people would have just burned each other alive 6 months ago, a year ago, right? Like if you think about
we
it,
did that to ourselves with Tabata handstand push-ups.
Exactly. And then laughed and high-fived afterwards. But yeah, I mean, think about it, man, there's been a lot of two-wave hold downs, and like we've weathered those, right? There's still friendships and affiliations that are still intact. It's shocking that they are. So I don't know. I think that's a testament to how strong this community is. And because we remember what I think of as the good old days, 14, 15, 16, when it was just humming, and a lot of people had some good stuff going on, or even like 2010, it's like there was a real feeling of togetherness and camaraderie that got shook to its core more than once.
True fact. So, Rory, what are you excited about? What are you looking forward to? What's next for you?
We say this in our family, like we do this once a week. We're like, what are we living for this week?
Yeah, what are you living for? What are you looking forward to?
What are we looking forward to?
Oh man. Okay. Well, on a personal level, we're doing a house remodel, and so I'm looking forward to having a house again. mostly for the sanity of my wife, right? Like I was okay with the demo process, but we're living on subfloors and dust right now. So I'm ready for that to be. I'm living for the remodel completion. Professionally, I mean, I always have been and always will be a massive CrossFit Games fan. And so that's up and coming. Can't wait for that. We've got.
Are they going to bring you back to commentate? Please tell me it's going to happen.
I mean, put in a call for me. I haven't heard anything yet, so maybe maybe your listeners can petition. But if I'm being honest, there's enough commentating and kind of stuff going on with Mayhem that I'll have my hands full anyways, and I don't mind just hanging out with my friends and cheering either. And then, dude, we got a trip to Sardinia coming up after that. We're running a competition here in Mayhem that I hope you both can attend in the first week of December. That's all geared towards Masters. That's the Legends competition.
Why are you looking at us?
Because any excuse to get
we would just be spectators, baby. We're not. I'm
almost senior master.
We are spectators. Yeah. We're spectators.
That's what I'm asking. That's all I want. I just want you to come spectate.
I'd love to.
Yeah, and then just the completion of this Mayhem athlete facility and getting you guys back out here to play in that thing too is going to be. Man, I feel like we're doubling the size of Cookeville, Tennessee. So,
and don't forget the upcoming discovery of Confederate gold in your cave.
Thank you.
Leading to your movement to an island.
I didn't want to over advertise because I don't want people banging down my my fence to get to it.
I just want a cool place to hang out with my man friends. Like that's just like this the Rory's man cave. Like you just set the bar. Man cave. Literal man cave.
Actual man cave.
Rory, you tell us where we can find you professionally, where we can find you
on the internet,
personally, where, because there are there's a faction of Rory files for sure.
I love it. Yeah,
where do we find the rows?
Well, so on social media, keep it easy, and I just go by Rory Mckernan. So that's an easy one. Man, I live on Instagram. I'm gonna follow you guys down the TikTok hole one day, but for now it's Instagram. All things Mayhem is mayhemnation.com, and all things Mayhem training is mayhemathletes.com. And that's a fancy new website. And yeah, man, it's kind of a catch-all for everybody to see what's going on.
My friend, please give your wife a huge hug.
Yeah, big smooch from us.
And I don't know if your son is 6'5" yet and is taking you out, but it's got to be like next week for sure.
He's coming up, dude. He's coming up. He's just started tackle football. I'm doing the strength and conditioning, so no big deal. Prescott South football coach here.
Wow,
oh my God,
that's legit.
Congrats.
How does we have so much to talk about more, but how does your son feel about his dad coaching the team?
Oh, he's fired up. He'll still give me a look like when something goes down that he doesn't like, but besides that, I'm still cool. Like I think I got one more year being cool, and then you guys know the rest of the story.
Georgia is
you've got teenagers.
Georgia's on a trip with her boyfriend's family right now, and she just texted me for workouts yesterday. That's all I need to know.
Yes.
The slow blade penetrates the shield. Yep. That's my second in reference. Everyone, you're welcome.
Thank you so much, Rory. It's such a pleasure. Thank you for chatting with us.
Thank you, friends. That was awesome.